Thank you, Lauren. Happy to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with your wonderful network. We've been a huge beneficiary of Branch's support, and it's been really encouraging to see the network of food entrepreneurs come together in Boston. So happy to be part of that. My background is basically I started Willie's journey started for me when actually I was 12 years old. I met this crew on a beach in Cape Cod, and they were all playing volleyball, and one of them was a goat farmer named Willie. And when I was growing up, he was brewing a ginger and lemon brew out of his kitchen that was like insanely good. So for years I was like, Willie, we should sell this at the farmer's market. Let's see what happens. And we didn't do anything. And then when I was in college, I talked to Willie for one summer. I was like, this summer, let's launch it at the farmer's market in P-Town and see what happens. And we started selling out of our cars in 2015, just at farmer's markets on Cape Cod with this ginger and lemon brew. And that's when I started looking at the beverage industry and specifically the alcohol industry and realizing the alcohol industry is incredibly broken because there aren't even nutrition facts on alcohol labels. And when people make alternatives to beer that are fruit-based, they're always radioactive coloring. They always smell like perfume, and they don't have any real flavor other than sugar, basically. And there was a huge opportunity to bring to customers transparency in the labeling and a lot better flavor with real fruit as an alternative to beer by making a hard seltzer with real fruit. And that's basically what we do. We're making the best hard seltzer in the industry because we are the only people who make it with real fruit. And that's meant that we've swept most recently the 2020 New York International Beer Festival, winning gold, silver, and bronze in the hard seltzer category, as well as winning best hard seltzer in the country there, and 9 medals last year. So we're in a space in alcohol that is the fastest growing space in alcohol. It's up 350% year over year, giving people the best liquid in the space currently. But we've learned quite a few lessons to get there where there were a ton of bumps and we had to iterate to get here. And we've seen that with COVID itself. There's been a lot of plans we had for this year to basically triple sales year over year. And now we're tracking for about double sales, which is still crazy good in these times. And we're incredibly lucky to be an essential business and to have a team that's healthy. But it's definitely required a lot of adjustment and thinking on your feet. And I'd be happy to cover any of those points for how we've done that, or talk about just the trajectory we've had as a business, how we got to this point, because we didn't start as hard seltzer plus real fruit and let's try and make the liquid in the fastest growing space. It's more, let's get there and see where we can fit and be something that has an impact on the market.
Excellent. Thank you, Nico, for that background and further detail about how you guys have been working during this time. So like I had said before, we want to open this up for questions from our attendees. I will ask at this time, if you do unmute yourself, you can please say your name, your company affiliation, and a question, whatever questions you have for Nico. So would someone like to get us started coming into the call? Don't be shy. And if you are, I'll start asking questions.
Hi, Nico. This is Melissa Martinelli from Superbrew. I'm a big fan of your product. We always have it in our refrigerator, so it's exciting to talk to you. Thanks for your time today. I was just wondering if you, as you plan for like a post-pandemic world, are you considering your pricing, and are you able to bring that down if our economy or when our economy seems to go down as well? I also make a beverage that is all about transparency, and it's healthy and sustainable. And we've always struggled with getting the price down. And right now, our cost of goods is relatively high because we're so small scale. But I was just wondering, like, how you think about pricing as we move forward.
Yeah, I would say We're actually not looking to decrease our pricing. We've basically seen in the short term, you've seen an impact, people trading towards higher volume packages, at least in the alcohol space, where there's been a return of like 30 racks, 30 cans in the package, or 24 case products, or 12 packs over 6 packs. But now it's it was 30 racks were winning, and now it's starting to go towards 12 packs. And so there was like a pantry loading that's now moving towards still a little bit of pantry loading, but not to the degree of at the beginning. And I think in general, what we're thinking for pricing is, consumers alcohol is an affordable luxury, especially beer. So spending an extra $1 or $2, which we try and price at over the leading people like White Claw, is something that isn't that much of a trade up experience for a customer. And if they can get a heck of a lot better experience out of the product, then they would be okay with that. That's our thesis. And that allows us then to go to retailers and distributors and argue to them to say, when customers are going to make fewer trips to these stores, you're going to want more profit in your basket per unit sold. And we can give you that opportunity through our product. So I actually think it's an advantage as long as you have a good, and I didn't really explain our thesis very clearly, but basically you have a customer group that you target and you have a message of why they will choose to trade up for your product. And then you can bring that type of thesis to your retailer or distributor and say, we're bringing you either a new demographic who will also be more valuable, and it complements your existing product lines. Then you can bring that message to them and get visibility on shelf. And I think in general, customers won't, I don't think, this is just, opinion, not necessarily fact. I don't think customers will mind an extra $1 or $2 or $3 on many products in the coming year on food and beverage side. I think they'll be spending probably less on other luxuries that are much larger ticket items. But one of the few joys a lot of people have in the current moment is in their food and beverage and in their experiences with other people that they share it with, their family who are in their core shelter in place. So I don't think that'll be impacted quite as much. It'll be in other areas.
Thanks. That all makes sense. I have like another question that's sort of unrelated, but if that's okay, Lauren. You said that you had been planning on tripling your sales, and now you're focusing on doubling them. How does that impact your investor relationships? Like, are you communicating that with them, and is that okay that you're not going to reach your targets? Like, how does that all work?
Good question. I think what we have done with investors is basically, I think it's completely okay to communicate. It's actually one of the most important things with investors overall is communicate early and often, especially when you see a rock coming, because then it shows you have a plan. And when things aren't going according to your plan, you're adjusting continuously, because no one expects you to be like, hey, I'm going to set this star a year out or 3 years out, when there's so much uncertainty in a business regardless. And you have to hit that mark no matter what. It's more, here's our plan. Here's my degree of uncertainty on it and why I think it's a good plan. But also here's what we're looking for as signals to say we need to adjust to this and how we're going to adjust. That's the kind of like framework I would use for investor communications, is set your targets, communicate why you think they're good targets, and then say, here's my degree of uncertainty and how I'm going to try and solve for that. That's like 101 of it. And then you can apply that in the case of COVID, where there's a lot of understanding actually from everyone for the fact that plans are being scrapped and remade every single day in this case. So it's actually a very good time to show that you have an operating system in your company or a structure that not only has a good communication system with that type of thesis with your investors, but then also you are a company that can adjust and think on your feet, which you can then use not only for investor communications, but for distributor and retailer communications. And I would say the key there is, build out a clarity on, here's my plan going forward now. Here's the things we're keeping our plan, stop, continue. So what are you going to start doing to adjust to COVID? What are you going to stop from your previous plan because of COVID, and what are you going to continue doing because of COVID? And those, to apply that framework to your plan at the beginning of the year and communicate to investors to say, all right, here's our new plan. Our numbers are going to be at this. And this is why we think this is reasonable. This is how we're potentially going to adjust, but this will continue to be adjusted as we look at how the market reacts and what happens with COVID. And use that as your framework for saying, okay, here was my plan at the beginning of the year. Here's our current plan and how we have to adjust. And we're going to message to you in also 3 months to say, or 1 month to say, this is how it's continued to change. Does that make sense? I think being straightforward and no bullshit about your numbers is key in this time. And there's a lot of understanding, and it actually sets you up with better relationships with your investors. And then you can reuse, there's a ton of work that goes into messaging to investors. So what I try and do is I repackage that for our wholesale partners, our retail partners. And that's kind of the second piece, is don't just waste your time communicating, use it as, what are your goals from this communication? So you want to communicate stability. You want to communicate clear plan. You want to make sure if you're going to need money in the future, your investors know far in advance that you will need it, and they're set up for that. And it's not like, holy shit, there's a fire sale coming. And then use also the packages that you make to communicate this information for any other source that you can, so that you're not wasting your energy doing it just once, but instead building a message to your wholesalers and retailers that you're a stable business and you have a clear plan and you're adjusting continuously.
That's great. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Great questions, Melissa. Thank you. Nico, we did have one message come in through the chat. And I would also encourage folks to first unmute yourselves to ask, but if you can't unmute yourself for whatever reason, we're happy to take questions via chat. So the question that came in was, what was the biggest challenge you'd faced while leading the company, and how did you overcome it? Perhaps taking COVID off the table.
Yeah, actually, I would say COVID is a big challenge, but it's easier now because we have a team of 16 and some really good people. So it's actually harder in the early days when you're alone and a lot of people don't necessarily have reason to believe in you and you're kind of doubting yourself. I think that emotional turmoil is probably the hardest stages of the company. So I would say now is actually easier than at the beginning. When we were just starting, there were a couple incidences. One, my co-founder got burnt out. I started this company with my best friend in college, and he got burnt out about 2 years in, and we were 4 months of runway at that point. So we were going to run out of cash in a quarter, and we needed to change production facilities at the same time, and purchase a pasteurizer that was a $200,000 expense we hadn't seen. So that was all quite stressful. And we were lucky enough at that time actually to be accepted in the Chobani incubator right in that period. And so it gave kind of a North Star and also an energy source. And I think the key in that situation was you just kind of have to keep going and chunk things out when stuff gets really hard, where you write out what you're stressed out about, and you say, you put it in order of saying, what's the most important to solve overall? What's the most important to solve in the short term? And then what are my steps this week to do that? And you just focus your North Star on what are those things. So in my case, in that previous world, it was, where are we going to get money? And how are we going to make sure that when we get money, we're using it in a productive way and we have a very good plan? And so that was really helped by the Chobani incubator, because there's two pieces there. One is the legitimacy of it, being accepted in a really prestigious beverage program where they had a 1% acceptance rate. It was really lucky. And then second, how do we build a plan for the future? They can really help in that. Where we came out of that program, we started as Farmer Willie's alcoholic ginger beer and just doing ginger beer. And we repositioned to be in the better for you space, which is something I'd always wanted to do and to have a clear message of it. And we were trying with the alcoholic ginger beer, but it was very discordant. They really helped us reposition. And those two things were huge benefits out of the program. But they kind of gave me the third piece, which is most important, was the energy and the belief in myself and the brand, which part of the reason we joined or got into the Chobani Incubator was Hamdi, the founder, saw me sampling at an event, and he looked me in the eyes and he's like, "You have what it takes." And that belief from their whole company and from Hamdi himself was one thing that's like, even when you doubt yourself completely, to be like, this is so freaking painful and I see a cliff and I don't know if I'm going to be able to like go over the bridge or find it or just fall off it. You have energy sources from your fellow community, and I was a huge beneficiary of that, as well as we had a couple of team members who were completely in it, regardless of the uncertainty of the circumstances with Cash and with Max, and that can't be underestimated, as well as I kept going most of all on that point for them. And from the fact that other people believed in what we were doing. So what I'd say is, I think it's most important to know what your energy source is, like to pull this into a lesson, know your energy source for why you're doing this journey. And for me, coming out of it, I learned, I want to learn to be the person who lives to the values of our business, and what our values of our business are. And regardless of how hard the struggle is to succeed, or to overcome, something that comes up in the road, if you have those values and you can continue to live to them, and you can build a team that lives to them, that's hugely rewarding. And it's actually a worthwhile challenge, which can help me become a better father or brother or son or whatever, in a way that this is all just business and money. And it's like, it matters. It definitely matters. And I'm in a lucky financial position where I think I could move into another industry and be okay. So I don't have that degree of stress. But that's the energy source for me, is our values, and being able to come back to your values or your energy source is what I think allows you most of all to persevere through these type of challenges. And then having as well a community that you can lean on and grow, like Branch does, is the second piece. So like having outside energy sources and having internal energy sources and gaining awareness of both and building that network for yourself is potentially the most important thing for perseverance. And that is the most important thing for building a business. So yeah, there's
Great.
my long-winded answer.
Great. Well, and I think one question that comes to mind for me in listening to you talk through that is, at what point did you realize that this was the business that you wanted to build and have the vision for the business that you want to build? It sounds like the Chobani Accelerator program was helpful to that end, but initially you just started out as a neuroscience major, partnering with a goat farmer to make this ginger brew. But when did you realize, oh, this is a company, we can, we have traction, we can make headway here, we need to have a vision? When did that come into focus for you?
Honestly, for some reason at the beginning, I just kind of knew it would work, or like felt like it would, which is very, a little bit arrogant. I was kind of dumb, without knowing all the things that I had to figure out, which was helpful. And you hear that all the time when you listen to entrepreneurs. I think I suffered from that as well. So I always felt it would be a business, and always was like, oh, there's a vision here somewhere. But then I think the stage that was really important was that values conversation. I think like it was more, there was always a certainty I want to build something, but then the certainty of why didn't come till that rock bottom point of being like, here are my values and who I want to be. That was when I was like, okay, I now actually know why I keep going through this pain and want to do this, and why I will continue to do it. That was the most important piece of this for me, I think.
Great. So other questions from the list of attendees, please feel free to unmute yourself or send them via chat. People are being very polite. Well, I'm happy to jump in with another one that I think has been more of an observation of working with you, Nico, which is, and you kind of touched on this in your initial answer, the first question that Melissa asked, but we've observed how awesome you've been at creating community around your investor base. And I think for entrepreneurs that are seeking capital, it's hard to come by capital for early stage food and beverage concepts, no matter what you're doing. Particularly that first round, whether it be, friends and family or seed stage. Branch Venture Group has tried to put some process to that, and we've been able to work with awesome entrepreneurs like you. But I'm kind of wondering, how you think about building community with investors, and keeping them in the loop. And if you talk a little bit more about how you've managed that, I think it'd be helpful for folks on the call that are either working with early stage companies and doing so, particularly through this time, or working on it themselves.
Yeah, I think especially in the early stages of fundraising, what we benefited most from was support from people who believed in us personally. And the way I think you would ideally foster that is there's something going on in the background, so I threw off for a second. The way you foster that is you build a relationship over, say, a year or two with someone as an advisor, I think, at the beginning, and you ideally look for someone who really has legitimacy in your space, who can help you build an improved business that has strategic decision making in it, in a way that you, as someone who's new to the space or trying to tackle in a new angle, won't necessarily have. And through that first relationship, you can start building legitimacy and understanding and strategic strength in your organization. And then once you've built a relationship over a year or two with that individual or several individuals in your category, then you can potentially leverage them as investors or as a person who can help you find other investors. And that would be how I'd tackle the early stages of fundraising for any industry, because you have to be smart enough to know that you don't know that much about your space, or there's people who know a hell of a lot more, have been there for so much longer, and you can bring a fresh pair of eyes and energy, but what they bring is the wisdom, and then use that support and the relationship you develop over that as a potential funding source. And then once you have that, once you have an anchor or someone who can give you legitimacy, it's a lot easier to then grow your network of other investors who see that, okay, this is someone who can listen and take advice and has people believe in him who are valuable to the industry opinion making or whatever strategy. And that would be kind of how I tackle the early stages, is try and build relationships and ask questions from people who really know their stuff in the space you're entering, and do that over several years, and do it in the next piece of it is a very personal way, where you're not doing, most people, especially they're investing in early stage business, are not entirely doing it for the return. They're doing it because they believe in you and they want to make a change. And they're probably, the ideal person is someone who's been in the industry 20, 30 years and has seen it all and is really knows their shit, but hasn't really been tested in a new way. And they kind of want to be pulled out into a new world. And you can give them that. What you're giving them is energy and that charge in their industry that they've potentially lost from being in it for so long. And what they can give you in exchange is wisdom and potentially capital in a network. And if you think about it in that way of that's the basic big picture of it, but then what can I give to them on a personal level that I know I can't match at all $100,000 check from them. It's not financial. Okay, what about coming to their kids' recital, or helping them walk their dogs, or giving them a letter, sending them a letter as a thank you, which is huge. Always do that for new meetings. What are the personal touches you can do, and how can you build a relationship that actually shows you care about the fact that they're giving you their time, and do that as much as you can. And then once you scale to the next stage of you've built your legitimacy with an individual's respect in the space, they've potentially invested, you've leveraged that to potentially expand your investor network. The next piece is build community and repeatable structures that can work in the flow of your organization, where the next step is communicating well and doing stuff like investor updates and calls that you can then leverage the materials you're using to communicate there for the benefit of the larger organization. And that was the stuff I covered earlier. So it's kind of those stages, I would say.
Great. So next question that we have coming through the chat is a bit looking to the future and what's coming down the pike for Willie Superbrew. Given the trends and, non-alcoholic beverages. We know you're forefront of the trend of low alcoholic beverages, but do you ever foresee the creation of a non-alcoholic beverage as part of the product lineup for Willie Superbrew?
Potentially. I think there's a lot of extensions you can do in either space, alcohol or non-alc. And then the real question is more, I think the greatest art is figuring out what are you going to core focus on? Like, what is your like purpose, and how do you ignore all the noise that doesn't benefit that? And I would say non-alc potentially is that type of thing where there are spindrifts. Like Spindrift is killing it in seltzer. We're doing a hard seltzer plus real fruit. If we ever tried to enter non-alc, we would be in competition with an incredibly well-run organization and a legend like Bill Creelman. I don't know if I want to do that. So, okay, then maybe you do tea or you do, juice or whatever. But the cool thing in our space is our category is growing 350% year over year, and it's a $114 billion industry. So there is so much room to grow that business to be a $1 billion company if you want, by doing very well in hard seltzer. And if we focus on that, we can go so deep on it. And as long as we make sure we don't chase shiny objects, then we'll have a better shot at it. There's a lot of luck that goes into that. So I would say no, really, unless it can somehow be argued that it very strongly complements what we're doing to build our brand.
Well, the person that asked that question said, great answer in terms of being aware enough to not dilute your brand. Well, we are coming to 1:30. Nico, we do want to thank you for your time and spending that with the Branch Food community and giving insight and perspective into how you've been dealing with COVID, how you built, Willie Superbrew to date, and truly an inspiration, I think, for folks, particularly that are young and hungry and want to build something meaningful and contribute to the future of food in a healthy way. So we really appreciate your time. Thanks to all of you who are joining us. We also want to share that tomorrow we will be joined by Mel Bandler, Retail and Sustainability Manager at Fairtrade USA. So she'll be talking about building more sustainable brands during post-COVID. So please tune in then. All further information about upcoming speakers can be found on our website, branchfood.com/servingupsupport. And as always, open to feedback. You could send that directly to info@branchfood.com. This session with Nico as well will live on our YouTube page. So if you would like to review it or suggest anyone else does, please find it there. And Nico will let you know when that's up as well. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.